You know that feeling, right? That invisible pull. You wake up, maybe even before your alarm, and your hand just automatically reaches for your phone. One tap, one scroll, and suddenly, wham, you're hit with this wave of just distressing news, conflicts, crises, natural disasters. It can feel like the world is collapsing around you, and you just can't look away. This isn't just, casual browsing anymore. It's a phenomenon that's become incredibly common, especially since 2020. And we have a name for it, doom scrolling. So for this deep dive, we're asking some big questions. What exactly is this doom scrolling that seems to have captivated so many of us? Why does it feel so incredibly hard to stop once you start, like really hard? And what are the real tangible impacts it's having on our minds and maybe even our bodies?
That's right. And it's a good set of questions. At its core, doom scrolling is basically the compulsive consumption of large quantities of negative online news. And it pretty much invariably leads to distress. So today we're going to try and unravel this complex interplay between, well, human psychology and the technology that fuels this very modern habit. And maybe more importantly, we want to offer some actionable insights, things you can actually do to help reclaim your well-being.
Okay, so doom scrolling is the word. But it feels like it just exploded into our vocabulary, doesn't it? Like overnight. Where did it actually come from?
Yeah, it does feel like that. It's surprisingly recent, actually. The term really started gaining traction around 2020. It almost feels like a direct product of, the initial waves of the COVID-19 pandemic. But its popularity was also significantly boosted by other major global events happening around then and afterwards. Things like the George Floyd protests, the 2020 U.S. presidential election, the January 6th Capitol storming in 2021, and a Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. It really became widespread among social media users during those really intense periods. And, its linguistic journey is quite interesting, too. Doom obviously carries that connotation of darkness or fate. Surfing kind of harks back to early web browsing terms. And scrolling is, well, that's the modern act of sliding through online content on our phones or computers. It's really cemented itself in our language now. Merriam-Webster officially recognized it in September 2023. And both Dictionary.com and Macquarie Dictionary chose it as a top trend or even word of the year way back in 2020.
Wow, okay. So definitely not just a passing fad. It's officially part of our everyday vocabulary now. But is it just about reading a lot of news, or are there specific characteristics that define doom scrolling as, like, different from just being a regular news junkie?
Yeah, there are. There are about four main characteristics that really set it apart. First, it's a persistent, often habitual activity. It's not just a one-off. Second, it's usually triggered by significant environmental factors like a crisis or some major ongoing event you feel you need to follow. Third, the sessions often last, well, multiple hours. People genuinely lose track of time entirely, just gone. And fourth, the content being viewed as consistently negative, distressing, and very timely. It feels urgent. It's that unique combination, really, that makes it a distinct behavior, not just, reading the morning paper online.
That makes sense. That combination feels
Right.
familiar, unfortunately. And speaking of who's affected, does this hit everyone equally, or are certain groups maybe more likely to fall into this habit?
That's a good question. While, look, anyone with a device can certainly fall into the habit, studies and surveys consistently suggest it's more prevalent among younger adults. For instance, a 2024 Morning Consult survey found that while about maybe 31% of American adults doom scroll regularly, that percentage jumps significantly for younger generations. It's 46% for millennials and a pretty striking 51% for Gen Z. Research also indicates that people who closely follow politics are generally more likely to engage in it as well.
51% for Gen Z.
Yeah.
Wow. When I think about my own habits sometimes, it really does feel like there's this invisible hand pulling me in. Are these platforms actually designed somehow to keep us hooked like this, or is that just me feeling a bit paranoid?
No, it's definitely not just paranoia. The design is absolutely part of the equation here. Think about the infinite scroll design, where content just keeps loading and loading. There are no page numbers, no next page buttons to click. It just goes on forever. It's credited in part to a designer named Ozza Raskin, who later actually expressed profound regret about it. He called it one of the first products designed to not simply help a user, but to deliberately keep them online for as long as possible. It essentially removes those natural cues, those little breaks that might make you pause and maybe put the phone down. And then there's the whole social media business model. It's core to this. These platforms use algorithms, complex ones, designed specifically to maximize user engagement, keep you looking, and they tend to prioritize emotionally stimulating content. And often, unfortunately, that means negative news and sensationalized headlines get pushed up. Why? Because longer engagement, more time spent scrolling, translates directly to more ads shown and more data collected. That's the business. So they're kind of weaponizing our emotions, you could say, for engagement. It creates this self-perpetuating cycle where emotionally charged information is constantly pushed at you, encouraging you to just keep consuming.
Weaponizing our emotions for engagement. That's a pretty strong way to put it. Is that
Yeah.
is that universally accepted, or are there like counter arguments from the tech side?
Well, it's certainly a widely acknowledged truth within the industry, I'd say, especially among former employees and ethicists who've, spoken out about it. While the stated goal might be something like connecting people or delivering relevant content, the underlying mechanism to achieve that goal is fundamentally driven by engagement metrics, which, as we've seen, often means content that evokes strong emotions, good or bad. But strong ones work well. It's maybe less about a deliberate, sinister plot and more about an emergent property of systems that are optimized purely for grabbing and keeping our attention.
Right, an emergent property. That makes a frightening amount of sense, actually. Okay, so with this understanding of the tech side, let's dive into the psychology. Why are we so drawn to upsetting information in the first place? What's going on in our heads?
Okay, yeah, the psychology is fascinating. This is where our brain's ancient wiring really comes into play. Part of it is what psychologists call our built-in negativity bias, or sometimes a negativity detector. Our brains are actually sort of hardwired to give bad news more weight, more importance than good news. As Professor Jeffrey Hall put it, potential threats provoke one's attention.
Hmm.
It grabs you. And you can trace this way back, evolutionarily speaking. Our ancestors needed to be hyper aware of threats. If there was a predator nearby or a storm
Like a
coming.
saber-toothed tiger in the next valley. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You needed to know about that for survival. It was absolutely crucial. The problem is, today, our brains are still operating on that same ancient software, constantly scanning for threats, even when those threats are just, pixels flashing on a screen. And those social media algorithms we just talked about, they're perfectly designed to feed this bias, showing you more and more of what grabs your worried attention. Then there's another big driver, the fear of missing out, or FOMO.
Oh, yeah, FOMO. I definitely feel that sometimes, not just with news, but like if friends are doing something fun.
Right. It's that same impulse, interestingly. It drives us to keep checking, keep refreshing, concerned we might miss some vital piece of negative information, something crucial. And studies have shown this is really prevalent. Research from 2013 to 2021 showed high rates. Over half of Americans back in 2013 reported experiencing FOMO, and similar high percentages were found in places like Italy and Poland in later years among internet users and teenagers.
So it sounds like we're genuinely wired for this, especially when things feel uncertain or chaotic. We're kind of looking for information to feel more in control, maybe.
Precisely. Yeah, that leads directly to what researchers call control seeking. It's a key factor. During uncertain times, like the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic was a prime example. People engage in doom scrolling partly because they're trying to gather information, trying to get a handle on the situation, gain a sense of mastery. They believe, maybe subconsciously, that staying informed will somehow offer protection or allow them to plan better. However, and this is really crucial, while attempting to seize control this way, individuals often end up feeling more anxious, not less. It backfires.
It's a paradox, isn't it?
It really is a difficult paradox. And there's also some fascinating insight coming from brain anatomy studies. It seems our brains have a kind of natural bad news filter. It's in a specific area called the inferior frontal gyrus, or IFG.
Our brain's bouncer for negativity.
Huh, yeah, that's a good way to think about it. It helps us process new information and usually filters bad news so it doesn't just overwhelm us. But what researchers are finding is that when we're constantly, relentlessly bombarded with upsetting information, this bouncer, this filter, gets overwhelmed, it effectively shuts down or at least becomes less effective. They even showed this in studies using transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS. It's a non-invasive technique. When they temporarily dampened activity in this brain region, people became more likely to absorb negative information and update their beliefs based on it, even if it wasn't rational. So this suggests that continuous doom scrolling might actually restrict the brain's ability to embrace good news, leading to more negative emotions, anxiety, maybe even feeling more isolated.
Wow. Okay, so the tech is nudging us, our evolutionary wiring is pulling us, and our brain's filter can get overloaded. So what does this all actually mean for our health? What are the real consequences of this behavior for our mental and physical well-being?
Yeah, the consequences are significant and they're widespread. Psychologically, doom scrolling can definitely worsen existing mental health issues. Things like anxiety, depression, chronic stress. It can amplify fear, feelings of isolation. For some people, it can even trigger panic attacks. It essentially reinforces negative thoughts and feelings, creating what researchers very aptly call a vicious cycle. You feel bad, you scroll, you feel worse, you scroll more.
Huh?
It can also lead to this phenomenon that's been termed popcorn brain.
Popcorn brain. Tell me more about that.
It's this idea that your brain becomes so accustomed to the constant rapid fire stimulation of scrolling through varied, often intense content
Mhm.
that it feels overstimulated, kind of jittery. It makes it genuinely difficult to engage with the real world, which, moves at a much slower, less stimulating pace.
So my brain isn't just tired, it's literally overstimulated like a bag of microwave popcorn.
Hmm.
That's a vivid image, and honestly, yeah, it resonates.
Exactly. And beyond that internal feeling, there's the impact of social comparison. Just passively scrolling and constantly seeing, curated, seemingly perfect lives online. That can really exacerbate feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, and depression, particularly for people who might already be prone to neuroticism. And just the sheer amount of time spent online often means less time for face-to-face interactions, which can, over time, contribute to deficits in social skills, especially for younger people, maybe. And there's quite a bit of compelling research supporting all this. One study had participants watch negative news, and predictably, they showed measurable increases in anxiety, sadness, and what they call catastrophic tendencies, thinking the worst. Another study, I think it was by the Huffington Post, found that participants who watched just 3 minutes of negative news in the morning were 27% more likely to report having a bad day 6 to 8 hours later.
Only 3 minutes. Wow.
Yeah. And in stark contrast, 88% of those who watched solutions-focused news reported having a good day. Big difference. And recent research reviews, looking across many studies, consistently link doom scrolling to worse mental well-being overall, reduced life satisfaction, increased existential anxiety, and even things like reduced employee engagement at work.
That incredibly powerful evidence and quite a wake-up call, really.
Are there physical symptoms too, or is it mostly mental?
Oh no, the physical effects are just as real and concerning. These can include things like headaches, muscle tension, tight neck and shoulders are really
No,
common.
I know that one. Yeah. Also, low appetite and significant difficulty sleeping. That's partly due to the blue light from screens messing with melatonin production, but also just the emotional stimulation from the content itself, keeping your brain wired. It can also lead to elevated blood pressure, increased levels of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline constantly pumping, which leads to both mental and physical fatigue. You just feel drained. And of course, there's the simple fact of prolonged sedentary behavior. Just sitting there scrolling for hours isn't great for the body either. And what's also fascinating and kind of insidious here is the addictive nature of it. Doom scrolling actually activates dopamine release in the brain's reward pathway.
Dopamine, but it feels bad.
Well, no, it's strange, right? But it's more about the anticipation and the novelty, the seeking of information that triggers the dopamine. It creates this reward loop that reinforces the habit, even though the outcome, how you actually feel afterwards, is negative. And adolescents and young adults seem particularly susceptible to this, possibly because their brains, especially the parts involved in impulse control and reward seeking, are still developing. For some individuals, it can even function as part of an obsessive compulsive disorder pattern, where the scrolling is an attempt, usually futile, to reduce anxiety by seeking information or reassurance, even if it just makes things worse in the long run.
Right, right. And we've seen this negative impact lead some people to just check out entirely, haven't we? This idea of news avoidance.
Exactly, and it's a definite growing trend. Studies show that 38% of people reported actively avoiding the news sometimes or often in 2022. That's a pretty significant jump up from 29% back in 2017. It's gotten to the point where even journalists themselves admit to avoiding the news sometimes because it's just too much, too overwhelming, which suggests, maybe, that the news itself could be presented differently. Perhaps by intentionally adding more elements of hope, agency, solutions, and dignity into stories, to prevent readers from feeling that constant sense of overwhelming helplessness.
Okay, this is really crucial then. How do we actually cut back? What are some concrete, practical steps we can all take to regain some control and protect our mental health without, sticking our heads in the sand entirely? Because staying informed still feels important.
Absolutely. The goal generally isn't total abstinence, unless maybe it's become a severe problem for someone. It's more about creating what we can call digital boundaries to recalibrate. It's about decreasing your reliance on it. So, One really simple but effective step is strategic phone placement. Keep your phone off your nightstand. Don't have it within easy reach when you first wake up. That avoids the automatic compulsive check.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
Many of us are. And similarly, maybe place it away from your direct workspace during working hours if possible. Out of sight, out of mind sometimes. Another great tip. Try having no phones at dinner or during meals generally. Leave them more than an arm's length away. Maybe put them on silent. Reclaim that time for connection or just mindful eating. You could also experiment with visual deterrence. Try switching your phone to grayscale mode.
Grayscale.
Yep.
Does it really work?
Well, early data suggests it does. It makes the screen, and especially those colorful app icons and images, much less enticing, less stimulating. It seems to decrease screen time for some people. And definitely take control of your notifications. Go into your settings and opt out of all those non-essential beeps, pings, and banners that are constantly pulling your attention back to the device. Another really powerful technique is to actively curate your feed. Be intentional. Unfollow news sources or accounts that consistently make you feel anxious or angry. You have that control. Instead, intentionally follow accounts that offer maybe educational content, uplifting stories, human interest pieces, humor, whatever makes you feel good or engaged in a positive way. This is sometimes called hope scrolling, and it can actually help reset the algorithms over time to show you more positive or neutral content.
Hope scrolling. I like that. Fighting fire with fire. Kind of.
Sort of. And finally, set time limits. Be deliberate. Use built-in phone timers or dedicated apps like ScreenZen to limit your scrolling sessions. Maybe start with 15 to 20 minutes, perhaps twice a day, or decide on a maximum, like no more than 30 minutes total, because research has linked longer sessions, anything more than that, to increased anxiety.
Okay, those are great for managing when and how much. But what about changing how we actually engage with the content when we are looking at it? Because it feels like the frantic act of scrolling itself can be part of the problem, right?
It absolutely is. That mindless, rapid scrolling is definitely part of it. So that's where mindful consumption techniques come in. Try doing mood check-ins. While you're scrolling, maybe every 5 or 10 minutes, just pause briefly, take a breath, and notice how you actually feel in that moment. If you're feeling worse, more agitated, sadder, angrier than when you started, pay attention. That's your body, your mind, giving you a signal that it's time to stop.
Listen to your body's cues.
Exactly. And practice moving from compulsive scrolling to conscious scrolling. Before you even pick up your phone, just pause for a second. Ask yourself why you're picking it up. Is it intentional or just automatic? You could even try a cognitive technique called thought stopping if you find yourself obsessing. Literally imagine a big red stop sign when the urge hits hard. And importantly, consciously slow your scroll. Pace, don't race, as some say. Make an effort to actually read or look at things more slowly. This can help improve your attention span over time and reduce that feeling of overstimulation. And when you find yourself catastrophizing and jumping to the worst possible conclusion based on a headline, ask yourself, does this information truly help me plan or prepare in a realistic way? Or is it just triggering negativity about something I ultimately can't influence right now? Try to focus on realistic outcomes.
Those are all fantastic strategies for when we're online or interacting with our devices. What about things we can do offline to support ourselves and help break this cycle?
Yes, offline is crucial. It's all about real-world engagement and replacing the scrolling time with healthier alternatives. So consciously prioritize healthier activities. What do you enjoy? Engage in hobbies, go for a walk outside, read a physical book, cook or bake something nice, and definitely move your body. Exercise, stretching, even just some deep breaths can really help you reconnect with your physical self. Plus, it boosts those feel-good neurotransmitters like serotonin, which counteracts stress, and really make an effort to connect with others face-to-face. Prioritize spending quality time with friends and family. Strengthening those real-world support networks is key to reducing feelings of disconnection and loneliness that can fuel scrolling. You could also try shifting your news focus slightly. Maybe focus more on local news. Local headlines tend to be less focused on huge, overwhelming global doom and gloom, and often more uplifting, focusing on community efforts, local solutions, things you might actually connect with.
That's a great point. More manageable, maybe.
Potentially, yes. And learn to say no. Empower yourself. If people around you are constantly sharing depressing or violent stories, it's okay to politely say you're trying to limit your exposure and you're not interested right now. Regain control of those conversations. And finally, make an intentional effort to focus on the good and practice gratitude. This could mean volunteering, engaging in altruistic activities, or simply taking a few moments each day to actively notice and appreciate the good things in your life, however small. It really can help shift your perspective and foster more positive emotions over time.
That's a really comprehensive set of tools, both online and off. But what if someone listening feels like they're really struggling? Like these techniques sound good, but they just can't seem to break free.
That's an important point. If you find you genuinely can't stop doom scrolling despite trying, or if it consistently makes you extremely upset, anxious, or depressed, then it's really important to seek professional help. Don't hesitate. Talk to your primary care doctor about it first. They can offer guidance and referrals. Or consider seeing a therapist, perhaps one specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. CBT can provide structured support and techniques to help you understand and address the root causes of the habit and develop healthier coping mechanisms.
Okay, wow. We really covered a lot today. We've gone from the deep roots in our brain science and the subtle influences of tech algorithms, all the way through to very practical, actionable steps that hopefully you listening can use to break the cycle. This deep dive has truly shown us how doom scrolling isn't just some simple bad habit, is it? It's this really complex interplay of our evolutionary wiring, our psychology, and the pervasive modern technology we use every day.
Indeed, it really is complex. And, while staying informed is essential in our fast-paced world, nobody's arguing against that. The key really lies in cultivating a healthy and maybe most importantly, a mindful relationship with information. It's about empowering ourselves, empowering you to navigate the digital landscape with intention and awareness, rather than just being sort of swept away by its relentless, often negative currents.
Well said. So, for you, our listener, here's maybe a final thought to mull over as we wrap up. Imagine the collective shift in well-being, just for a moment. If we all actively chose to engage more consciously, more mindfully, with the information we consume each day, how might our individual lives, and maybe even our communities, transform if we prioritize that mindful engagement over compulsive reactive scrolling? What new possibilities might open up for us when we intentionally step back from that infinite stream of negative news and consciously reconnect with the present moment, with the people around us, and maybe with the positive impacts we can actually create in the world? Something to think about.